Morning and welcome to Townsquare Sunday. I'm your host, Jim Phillips, and today we're talking about winter, ways to protect you and your property during the coldest time of the year. My guest is Fairhaven Firefighter and Paramedic Wayne Oliviera. Wayne, good to see you again.
Hello there.
Last time we talked was during the summertime, and you gave us some tips for keeping your cookouts and boating trips safe. It seems like a long way from that now, especially what's been going on this week. Today, we're talking about the extreme cold and snow and what we should be thinking about to stay safe. What's the toughest thing about fighting fires in extremely cold weather? Obviously, it's the cold and all that goes with it.
Right. I mean, unfortunately, our biggest advocate is water, and water this time of year just doesn't go well. In freezing conditions, you got to remember we've got 750 gallons of water in a truck. We're trying to fill hose lines that are in freezing weather, and it just becomes so difficult to try to put out the fire and yet not have all of your equipment freeze up. And that's even the other equipment that you're using. You put it down for a little while, and it's frozen to the ground.
Sure.
Slippery conditions. Firefighters get hurt on the fire ground. So it's a very difficult thing to try to do in the winter.
Let's talk about going inside the home and what people often do to get more heat in this time of the year. One of those things is plug in space heaters and things like that. Good idea?
Well, if used correctly, they can work for you. You just have to be careful of putting them near combustibles, watching the outlets that you're using, make sure you're not overloading circuits. Remember that kerosene heaters, the unvented space heaters, are not legal in Massachusetts, yet we still see those. People try to use them. They're very dangerous. They create a carbon monoxide issue, which I'm sure you'll get into down the road. But again, if used properly and carefully, and if you really watch what you're doing, space heaters can be okay. They're designed for a certain area. You're not going to be able to heat your house with it, but you can certainly keep your toes warm and keep the chill off, and just watch where you put them, making sure they're not near combustibles.
Let's talk about kerosene heaters. They are illegal in Massachusetts.
Correct. Unvented space heaters using kerosene are not legal in Mass, and have not been for quite some time. And that became more of an issue with carbon monoxide. When they're unvented like that, we tell people that any fossil fuel that burns gives off carbon monoxide, which is that colorless, odorless, tasteless gas that basically you don't know it's there. So burning that fuel inside the home or inside an unvented area is going to cause a carbon monoxide issue, as well as the fact that you're burning a liquid fuel, that could leak, could splatter, and could cause other things to burn as well. And it's an open flame.
If you don't know, and I think that most people know this, carbon monoxide can be fatal.
Absolutely.
It's a fatal situation there.
Yeah.
We saw one, I believe it was in a Acushnet.
Correct.
Several years ago. So you've got to be careful about those things. You've got to have your detectors up and running. And
right. And, carbon monoxide detectors are so cheap these days. Years ago, they were very expensive. But now that they're being used in mass quantities, they've become very cheap. For probably like $30, you can get a detector. Here in Mass, they are required on each floor of habitation. So when you do sell your house, you'd have to have a detector anyway. They are required by Mass law when you transfer your property. But even that being said, they're a great tool. Again, it's a colorless, odorless, tasteless gas. How would you even know it was in your home unless you had a detector? Again, being so cheap, there's no reason why these homes shouldn't have them, especially in the winter months when we close up the house. We try to make them airtight, so there is no ventilation. And carbon monoxide can be given off by your water heater, your stove, your oil burner, just about anything that burns those fossil fuels. So, and we're finding a big increase in the amount of runs that we do for carbon monoxide detectors going off. And sometimes they're false alarms, but we've had a series of alarms which are legit, and we get there and we meter the home, and then we'll call Eversource for you. and we're finding that there is carbon monoxide in the home. So the detectors do work, and they do save lives.
Wood stoves and fireplaces, they're certainly good heat generators, but they can pose some problems too.
Right. And they're awesome. They create a great atmosphere. They're toasty warm. A little bit of work if you don't mind going out there and chopping some wood, but then again, I guess it's a good healthy thing for you. But again, when used properly, and that seems to be the message that I try to get across. When used properly, wood stoves, fireplaces can be great, but you've got to clean them, you've got to maintain them, you've got to make sure that they're installed properly. One of the big problems we find with probably fireplaces, first of all, that the flues can become clogged with not only creosote, but in the fall months, birds make nests in there. They'll be plugged up with just debris that the birds have put in there. So you go to light your first fire of the season, and it's not going to vent properly because you've got stuff in there. So you need to inspect them both visually and hire a certified chimney sweep to look those over, make sure you don't have any cracked flues, make sure they're clean. And the same goes true with wood stoves. That vent pipe goes somewhere, and you have to make sure that the exit path out to fresh air is clear and not blocked, and that you're not getting smoke and carbon monoxide back into your home.
We usually think of generators when it's hurricane time, but I heard some chatter on the scanner about generators as people were expecting some difficult time this past week, and we certainly got a lot of very cold temperatures and a howling blizzard, winter cyclone, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
A lot of power outages in Fairhaven, and the generators, obviously, though, they can be valuable this time of the year too.
Right. It's one thing to lose power in the summertime. You're just without light, but the wintertime here, we're without heat as well. So the generators, in my opinion, are probably more valuable. So even in the winter, to power back your house so you can get some heat. But again, the carbon monoxide issue, people put them too close to air intakes. They run them in the garage because they don't want to run it outside if it's raining or there's snow. But you have to remember that exhaust is going to go somewhere, and in most cases, it's going to find its way back into your home. You should never run a generator in the garage, in the cellar, anywhere in the home. And make sure that if you do have air intakes, that generator is far enough from the home that it's not going to be sucked into the air intakes, that carbon monoxide, and bring it back into your home. So again, used wisely, used safely, generators are, again, another great tool.
You're listening to Townsquare Sunday. My guest is Fairhaven Firefighter and the Public Information Officer for the department, Wayne Oliviera. Shoveling sidewalks and walkways. Now, we've got kind of a tough situation this past week. We had a storm on Thursday, a major storm on Thursday, and Friday it was about as cold as you can get, especially in the early morning hours. So it was tough to shovel, tough to clean those sidewalks.
Yeah,
but it is a responsibility, though, that people should understand.
It is. And, this was a very tough storm. Anybody who's out there shoveling knows that there was a lot of slush underneath. So when you move the snow, it seemed like it just came back at you. And once that water remained and the temperatures dropped, it was a sheet of ice. We like to remind people, we run the ambulance here in town as well, so we see a lot of not only back injuries, but cardiac issues from shoveling. So, we do want to warn people that shoveling in moderation, don't try to take that big scoop. This was extremely heavy, wet snow, and if you're going to try to move a whole shovel full of wet slush, it taxes your body. And again, when done correctly, shoveling can be an okay thing. It can be good exercise. But for any of those folks that have cardiac issues, any health issues, you have to do it in moderation if you have to do it at all. So just go slow. Do a little bit of shoveling, go in the house, take a break, get warm, come back out, do a little more. But again, in moderation. That's kind of the key word here.
Upper 30s on Monday.
a heat wave. It's going to be awesome. We're going to find people at the beach.
Well, I don't know about that, but snow buildups on roofs. Is that a problem in Fairhaven? Sometimes it is.
And it has been in the past. And here with this storm in Wareham, I believe they had a roof collapse with the former Benny's building.
Right.
Again, it was a tremendously. We started out with rain, and then we had those big wet flakes come. And unlike nice powdery snow, that wet snow just has a tremendous water weight to it. And although roofs in New England were designed for snow, there's only a certain load they can take, and just putting that heavy wet snow can be a problem. And if you remember, several years ago, we had one storm after the other. There were several roof collapses in the area, and it became a very real problem. That they were coming out with the snow rakes. You couldn't even find them in stores because people were buying them as quick as they could put them out. But if you do have the opportunity, especially with a wet, heavy snow like this, try to get the snow off your roofs as best you can. Don't put yourself in danger. Don't get up there with a ladder, but try to use those long rakes and pull as much weight as you can off that roof and kind of lighten the load.
The other issue is ice, of course, and we're going to see a lot of ice here. We've seen a lot of ice this weekend, and we'll continue to see it on Sunday. The rest of the day today. With the cold weather we've had, there might be some people who think, well, ice on a body of water, it's frozen, that's safe, we can go skate on it. Right. I mean, we've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure. And that, out of everything, that just kind of remains one of the tragedies that are always kind of foremost in our minds. When the weather starts getting cold like this, everybody wants to go skating, do some outdoor activities, but you really have to be, super careful with that. There really is no safe ice. We don't certify ice. We've had people call, and they'll call the fire station wanting to know if the ice is certified for skating, and we never do that. Years ago, some of that went on, but departments have smartened up because there really is no way to tell people that ice is safe. Obviously, saltwater ice is worse. That truly is never really safe to do anything on. And even freshwater ice, we warn people that unless there's been a substantial long-term freeze, you should always be very careful about wandering off on the ice. And never do it alone. If you are going to venture off onto maybe a shallow pond and do some skating, always bring a friend, always have somebody there. So if you get into trouble, somebody can call right away.
A lot of off-street parking is available in Fairhaven, a lot more than in a city like New Bedford. So the impacts of parking bans are somewhat less here in Fairhaven. But we still have a parking ban in Fairhaven, is that right?
We do, and it goes from basically the fall. We do parking opposite the fire hydrants, and it goes right through the winter. Now, unlike other maybe cities and towns that do it just when there's an impending storm, Fairhaven, if you live in Fairhaven, you should be aware that we have the one-sided parking ban right throughout the winter, whether it's snowing or not. So just be careful because it doesn't have to be actively snowing, and you could end up with a ticket. So, make sure you heed the parking ban at all times.
And you drive an ambulance, you respond to, or you're part of an ambulance crew that responds to emergencies. When streets are not adequately plowed because people don't obey the parking ban, that can be a problem. That can hurt response times, clearly.
It makes it very difficult, and people don't understand that when you're parking on a street that's already been restricted by snow on both sides of the street, so it's narrowed the street down, and then you park directly across from another person, you've basically made that street so narrow that it's not even adequate for a car to get down, let alone an ambulance. We are oversized. We're wider than the average vehicle. And if you think that we're going to try to get down the end of a street that's now blocked, we have to back out of that street, find another access to that home, probably going around the block. It takes valuable minutes that that could mean a life or death situation for a patient who's eagerly waiting the arrival of that ambulance. And since you brought that up, I'll just take a quick opportunity to remind people, rules of the road. When you hear an ambulance coming, please pull over. It's not pull to the right and race. We have people that pull to the right and they keep going. We don't have an opportunity to pass them. And it just creates a very dangerous situation. We're trying to get to where we're going as safely as possible, but the easiest way for us to do that is for you to pull out of the way and just give us, just yield and give us a right of passage on the roadway. So we really implore people to take that into consideration, especially when there's ice and snow on the roadways.